So I'm going to play this for you. And this is David Frum's. David Frum is on Morning Joe. David Frum makes a comment on Morning Joe. Remember, he is a contributor. He's not a reporter. He's a contributor to the network. And contributors or analysts are usually given wide berth to be able to state their opinion and what they think, and that's why they're on there. But he made this comment on Morning Joe. I believe it was yesterday, his reporting says. Let me get it here. And after he made the comment, there were some consequences. Okay. So this is David Frum's comment on Morning Joe. Here it is.
Well, just given what one sees on camera, if you're too drunk for Fox News, you're very, very drunk indeed. So that's alarming. In 1989, President George H.W. Bush nominated John Tower, senator from Texas, for Secretary of Defense. Now, Tower was a very considerable person, a real defense intellectual, someone who deeply understood defense, unlike the current nominee. And it emerged that Tower had a drinking problem. And when he was drinking too much, he would make himself a nuisance or worse to the women around him. And for that reason, his nomination collapsed in 1989. You don't want to think that our moral standards have declined so much that you could say, let's take all the drinking, all the sex pesting, subtract any knowledge of defense, subtract any leadership, and there's your next Secretary of Defense for the 21st century.
So there you go. Hang on. I need the MJ producers. I need the Morning Joe response this morning, because they did respond this morning, and I need that. And make sure we have that tape ready. They responded this morning. So right after that, this is what happened with Joe and Mika. Here it is.
Before we go to break, a little bit earlier in this block, there was a comment made about Fox News in our coverage about Pete Hegseth and the growing number of allegations about his behavior over the years and possible addiction to alcohol or issues with alcohol. The comment was a little too flippant for this moment that we're in. We just want to make that comment as well. We want to make that clear. We have differences in coverage with Fox News, and that's a good debate that we should have often. But right now, I just want to say there's a lot of good people that work at Fox News who care about Pete Hegseth, and we'll want to leave it at that.
Okay. What do you guys think of that? Was that warranted? What did you think? Do they need to do that? Why were they explaining? They went on this morning, and there was a huge explanation. Now, I want to know what you think, because remember, Joe and Mika were they went down to Mar-a-Lago. They have faced some real backlash for that. Now, whether it's warranted or not, I will let you decide. But I think that, the response to them is a bit different because they have been, such outspoken critics of the president-elect and the former president. They have been really, really outspoken critics. And so my question is, is that warranted? What do you think? Why would they do that? It's not an apology. It's kind of a tacit apology. Some people would say it's a CYA. And look, when they responded this morning, they actually asked for him to come on, for David Frum to come on to explain what he had to say this morning. So they asked for him to come on because he put out a post. I don't know if we have the full screen of it. We should have the full screen of what he said. So he wrote something in the Atlantic. And he says, let me get what he has said here in the Atlantic. So he wrote a post in the Atlantic about that moment. And I'm going to read to you what he had to say about it. Okay. Here it is. If I can find it. I had it last. There we go. Okay. So here we go. So he said, it's called The Sound of Fear on the Air. He said, it's an ominous sign that Morning Joe felt it had to apologize for something that I said. And he goes on to say, this morning, I had an unsettling experience, he says. I was invited onto MSNBC Morning Joe to talk from the studio in Washington, D.C. about an article I had written on Trump's approach to foreign policy. Before getting to the article, I was asked about the nomination of Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense, specifically about an NBC News report that his heavy drinking worried colleagues at Fox News and at the veterans organizations he had headed. A spokesman for the Trump transition told NBC, these disgusting allegations are completely unfounded and false, and anyone peddling these defamatory lies to score political cheap shots is sickening. Okay. So he said, I answered by reminding viewers of some history. And he talked about what he just said in 1989. And he goes on to say that. He said, I told the story in pungent terms. It's cable TV, after all. And I introduced the discussion with a joke. If you're too drunk for Fox News, you're very, very drunk indeed. I mean, what am I missing here? At the next ad break, a producer spoke into my ear. He objected to my comments about Fox, and he warned me not to repeat them. I said something non-committal, got another round of warning. After the break, I was asked a follow-up question on a different topic about President Joe Biden's pardon of his son. I did not revert to the earlier discussion, not because I had been warned, but because I had said my piece. I was then told that I was excused from the studio chair. Shortly afterward, co-host Mika Brzezinski read an apology for my remarks. And that's the apology. That's what they said was an apology. Now, this morning, Morning Joe is saying that is not an apology. He says, David Frum, the journalist, says, she's right, of course. There are good people at Fox News. But if NBC's reporting, based on interviews with 10 current or former Fox employees about Hegseth's alcohol abuse is accurate, many of those same good people have failed to report publicly that their former colleague appointed to lead the armed forces of the United States was notorious in their own building for his drinking. That would be a startling and shameful shirking of responsibility on a matter of grave national importance. What's the appropriate language to call it? What's the appropriate language to call it out? I'm a big admirer of Morning Joe's show and the commitment of all involved to bringing well-informed political discussion to a national audience. I recognize, too, that the prominence of the program has exposed the hosts and producers to extraordinary pressures and threats, and goes on to talk about that. But then he ends, I think, by something saying, he talks about what he has written here. And he says, I write these words very aware that I'm probably saying goodbye forever to television, a television platform that I enjoy and from which I have benefited as both viewer and guest. I have been the recipient of personal kindness from the hosts that I have not forgotten. I do not write to scold anyone. I write because, and this is the important part, and I believe it's true, fear is infectious. Let it spread, and it will paralyze us all. The only antidote is courage, and that's infectious too. And I agree 100%. And that's why I say you must support your independent media. If you have people who are, and I'm not saying, look, I'm not saying that there is no legitimacy to the, Joe and Mika having some fear or some concern about being retaliated against by the administration. I'm also not saying that they should not have taken a meeting with him, but the circumstances around that meeting are questionable. And how they did it and the timing, that's questionable. And how they have been such really strong critics of the former president, it's questionable. It makes their viewers see them in a different light. And I do believe, I know that it affects their credibility. Again, I'm not saying that they should not have met with him. I don't know if they needed to go down to Mar-a-Lago. Perhaps they should have asked for an interview request, as I have stated before. Let me know what you think. But look, David Frum has his idea and experience of what happened, and then Morning Joe has theirs. So I want to know what you think. I'm going to let Morning Joe explain what they said this morning, and then we'll talk about it, because this is concerning. Here it is.
But let me tell you something. I wasn't fearful in Congress when Newt Gingrich and leadership said they were going to destroy me, run people against me. I said, go ahead, make my day. Wasn't fearful on this show. Nobody in the front office. By the way, I always have Republicans say, oh, they're telling you exactly what to say in the front. No, nobody's once told me what to say here. So we need to stand shoulder to shoulder and keep fighting and have no fear, show no fear, because as FDR said, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
The meeting that we went to was not kissing the ring or bending the knee or all your other ridiculous headlines. It was a serious meeting. And quite frankly, if we hadn't told anyone about it, if we hadn't shared it with our viewers to be transparent, and that was our call because it was a meeting on background, nobody would have known about it.
The only thing we did that caused this Twitter storm is we told you. Now, if you'd prefer that we don't tell you everything that we do, that's fine. But we just thought in this case, transparency was best.
This is really tough. Okay, this is a really tough one for me. Number one, they're going to say, who are you to criticize them? Okay, here's the thing. I've been on the show. I've gone on once for my book. I have a really great relationship with Joe. I don't know Mika that well. I mean, I've met her before, but I don't really know her. I don't really want to beat them up. But when you're explaining, you're losing. Why are they explaining? And I don't understand, because I've anchored, I used to anchor 2 hours a night for 8 years. Unless something was really egregious, we never had something where a producer would come on the ear of a contributor, especially who's there for their opinion, and say something like that. But saying you're too drunk for Fox News is not. If someone had said, if you're too drunk for the Don Lemon show, then we would just kind of laugh it off, like, who cares? If you're too drunk for Fox News, then, maybe there's some issues. Maybe there's some alcohol issues in the family that they're sensitive to. I don't know. But no one has said that he was an out and out alcoholic. No one has said that. Look, but the things that they say about other people on that show, I think Joe and Mika have said things that are far worse about people than what David Frum said about Fox News. And I don't know what kind of allegiance that Joe and Mika have to Fox News. I just feel like Joe and Mika have been doing a lot of explaining lately. And if I had made the decision to go down to Mar-a-Lago, I would just have said, that's my decision, and I'm sticking to it. I mean, am I wrong? I mean, do you think I'm being too hard on them? Like, why are they explaining so much? Why are they explaining so much? They're afraid of ending up on Trump's enemies list, says D. Talley. By the way, thank you for your support. Why are they afraid of ending up on the list? They should be stronger about that. Joe and Mika, let me just say this. Joe and Mika have the means to be able to fight back against Donald Trump. And not only do they have the means financially, they have, and they probably wouldn't even have to use their own if they had to. Let's just say that there was a court case. The network would be indemnified by the network, and would be a great example to the world about courage as a journalist, as journalists. I know of at least one journalist who's being sued by Donald Trump, George Stephanopoulos, for citing a report in the Washington Post regarding what the judge said about the essay allegations, not allegations, the verdict of E. Jean Carroll. When the judge clarified afterwards, saying it was akin to grape. I'm saying that for the algorithm. You know what I'm talking about. And just from citing that report and saying that he's being sued for it, and there may be others as well. but it is fear, but it's not, tranquil rain says lost all respect for them, but it's not just them. They're just the latest example, and the spotlight is on them. If the spotlight wasn't on them, perhaps it would be on other people. Perhaps it would be on, it'll go to other people. So I don't understand what's going on with Joe and Mika. Maybe I'll text Joe and ask him, like, what's up? Because of all people, I would have thought that Joe Scarborough, being a former Republican, I'm not sure where he is. I think he's a former Republican, and I know he's a former Republican congressman, that he would just say, F it. Of course he would welcome the opportunity to do an interview with the president. Of course he would welcome the opportunity to meet with him. But did he have to do it so fast and in that manner? This one, I am torn about this because I want to support them, but they're too much explaining. Joe had just said, look, that was my decision to meet. That's it. He also mentioned in his response this morning that he invited David Frum on the program. And then he said, he said he couldn't come on today, invited him on today. He said, David Frum said I can come on Friday. Joe Scarborough says, I will be down, I'll be somewhere doing an interview with the former president, Bill Clinton. And he said, perhaps Bill Clinton in an interview, while he's there, will give me something on background that will give me perspective on where the Democratic Party is going, the future of the Democratic Party. And he said there were things in their talk with Donald Trump that gave him some perspective and insight on background that, as a journalist, do they consider themselves journalists? I don't know. I know Mika does. And I'm not saying that's not disparaging. I'm not saying that, because Joe is a former congressman. So I guess, just by default, Joe is as well. But it's really, really scary, I believe, because I think that a lot of people, when people don't tell the truth, usually they're long-winded explanations, says Christine. I'm worried that the media is they're acquiescing too much. And they are just like, we need to do this, we need to do that. We have to remember, and I don't believe that Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, I don't think they've forgotten just what a terrible person Donald Trump has been. Mika is a very strong supporter of women publicly. And, to have, the E. Jean Carroll of it all, the 34 criminal counts of it all, the liable for sexual assault, according to the judge, grape of it all, to have that out there to be true, I don't understand. And Pete Hegseth, the same thing. There's outrage. They appear to be outraged by some things and then not about others. Sometimes they appear to be outraged about folks I found in the media and even there, outraged about and upset about things that people say or what they believe that they have said rather than their actions. I think the folks who are in independent media, like myself and others, I think maybe we have more to worry about, again, because we don't have the big system behind us, and they will try to crush us, right? The audits, you better watch what you say. They will try. But for the big organizations that are news organizations, that they should not be worried. But here's why they're worried: because they want to do business with the administration. They want their mergers and acquisitions to be able to go through without a problem, without Donald Trump holding them up. They want all sorts of whatever they may need. They don't want any resistance from the FCC chair, the incoming FCC chair. It's not just about Mika and Joe. It's not just about the faces that are out there and the journalists who are standing there, and they should be the bulwark between fascism, dictatorship, They're supposed to be the folks holding the feet to the fire for people in high places, truth to power, without fear or favor. But it's not just them. They've got the corporate owners' influence over them that they are concerned about. Do not say anything that's going to rile up the administration, or we're going to have some problems. They're going to go after us. They're going to go after our license. We won't be able to get this cleared and that done and this and that and this and that. That's fucked up, y'all. That's really, for the American media, that is really frightening and scary and jacked up. It's not what American journalism is supposed to be about. Is this why people are turning off the mainstream media? But is this why they're turning off the mainstream media? And do you believe it is fear? Aaliyah Hunter says, do not obey in advance. We are America, not China, says Petty Things. Yes, says Anne of Green Gables. We need to revolt, says Steph in the City. Yes, it's FU, says Linda Furker. Yes, it is. So then where do we go? Where does journalism go from here? Because even if you look at it, even if, I think it's also a good place now to bring some sunlight into just how this works. And if those guys who are in front of the camera and the people who are there in mainstream media, if they actually stood up to their bosses, if they actually said, we're not going to deal with this, we need to bring some sunlight to this, then it would have to change. Because they can't fire them all. And if they do, then that makes them look bad. So maybe there's something good to come out of this. I don't know. I don't believe it, though, because I think that as long as they are as long as people are buying and acquiring media organizations, number one, because it's, some sort of vanity play for them, right? Some sort of ego play for them, or they are using it to promote their own product as a promotion tool for the entertainment wing of the country and the company, or it helps the bottom line. It's easier and cheaper profits than putting out a multi-million-dollar movie. Unless that changes, then nothing is going to change. This is bad. And I need to, and Joe and Mika, first thing in the morning, you turn on your TV, Joe and Mika, we need you to stand up. We need you guys to do what you were doing and saying, calling truth to power. And I know that you say you're going to continue to do it, but it is concerning because every time something happens, like David Frum is a good dude. And David Frum is no novice. And if he's used to being on that show and knowing how it works and knowing that there's some flippancy there. They're flippant. They're too cute by half sometimes. They go a little far, which is why they are successful, is because they aren't anodyne. They aren't bland. They aren't milquetoast. It's because Joe Scarborough leans in. It's because Mika also leans in, but Mika is an adult and she allows Joe to be Joe. And she knows, I think, I could be wrong, that the show is Morning Joe. Like, it's Joe and her. The combination is great. But Joe is the secret sauce. Not even the secret sauce. Joe is the sauce. That's why the show is called Morning Joe. David Frum tells it like it is. And David Frum has been on that show and he knows how it operates. He's very familiar with it. And then all of a sudden he's on there and then a producer is saying whatever. And something that he said no one would ever have picked that up. It would not have gotten the press that it has gotten had they not made such a big deal out of it. It's really interesting. Really weird and interesting. Thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure you hit the like button. It helps us with the algorithm. And also, we'd love for you to become a subscriber. So hit that button, too. We're live every day at 10 a.m. Eastern Time and 5 p.m. Eastern, so there's plenty of content for you to check out.